Let me just gather my thoughts. Hi everybody, Scott here. In this video I want to talk about INFJs and going deeper, going beyond NI. And what I mean by that is INFJs, not all, but a lot, can have a journey in life whereby they get a little estranged from their dominant function through their own childhood, and then rediscover it later in life. And that sort of rediscovery can be well, it can be life-changing. It can turn, in a sense, night into day. What was once confusing now becomes clear. The sense of connectedness within becomes much greater. And it can be almost like such a shift that it can feel like a reconnection with the self. And I would say that that is true, but it's really a reconnection with an aspect of self, or it's probably a fundamental aspect of self, being that it's a dominant form of functioning, of processing, but it's still just an aspect of self. And I think for some INFJs, this reconnection can feel like they've come home. And again, I would say, yes, that's true, but there's more to the story. And what can happen is the disconnection from NI throughout some of one's life journey can lead to issues. And it can also, there can also be just other life issues that happen in one's life that go undetected or unaddressed. And that reconnection with NI can, it's like the INFJ growing up can not have an awareness of those other issues, and then rediscover NI, which can bring a certain level of clarity, but it can lead to like almost like the brightness of NI can further blind the INFJ into from seeing the other issues that they may have. And I think so it's kind of like everything with INFJs. I'd say probably more specifically Enneagram Type 4 INFJs. The blessing comes with a curse. That there is both an awakening that can take place with NI discovery and reconnection, but it can also be a bit of they can get stuck there. So it's really important to keep going, that there's actually more. And so in a video that I made a little while ago called INFJ Supercharging NI, I addressed a lot of this, but this is almost like a continuation from that video, in that there needs to be a differentiation, if I'm saying that word correctly, from the NI versus the self. And I think that video that I made, it sort of partly blurred that in a sense, the video sort of addressed helping an INFJ to reconnect with NI and how to do that. But I think it sort of clouded or sort of blended NI and the self together in a certain way that I wanted to kind of clarify in this video. So it's important for INFJs to as part of NI reconnection is to address the issues that might be hindering NI processing. So what I'm trying to say is that there can be a rediscovery of NI that is real, but then there are still issues that hinder its ability to be fully functional. The rediscovering of it is not the end, it's really the beginning. And so, and like I was saying, it can kind of cloud, it's like, I think subconsciously, I think INFJs see it as an opportunity to avoid pain. Meaning, I can live comfortably in my NI and I can sort of speak my truth from there, but it can be used as a way to bypass dealing with the deeper issues of life. And this video is really suggesting to if that's happening, to recognize that and to go deeper. So part of NI development is going to those deeper issues. And it's also recognizing that NI is only a part of self. It's not the self. And, we can look at, what is the self? What's the definition of self and so on. I simply put it that the self is the core of us that was created when we were conceived, when we were born, that we have a true identity, a true self. And the MBTI simply just describes a way that we can view parts of the self, if you like. And I think some people can get stuck in identifying only themselves sort of primarily from the MBTI theory, and not see it as just a way of understanding some aspects of the self, as opposed to, I think that's the healthy way to see it. Whereas I think there's a danger of almost hiding oneself within the MBTI. And I don't think there's anyone on the planet that doesn't grow up with some level of dysfunction and a collection of some issues growing up in their childhood. There's certainly a bell-shaped curve when it comes to all of that, but for the most part, basically everybody has some issues. Some are easily more able to be identified and addressed than others. Some have more issues than others, and all of that. But it's really just about being open to those issues. And it's amazing how, as human beings, not just INFJs, as human beings, how well we're able to cover those issues to survive. And that's necessary in order to live, but it's only, it should be seen as such, as a way to survive. And then from there it's about, okay, now how do I move from surviving to, I guess, to use the cliche, thriving, or living a more full life. So part of the journey is it's the rediscovering of NI. It's working through the issues to do two things. Essentially, is to fully allow NI to work inside of the INFJ. To do that is to deal with the deeper issues. But dealing with the deeper issues, of whatever might be there, reintroduces the person to the self more and more and more. It's like a progressive journey. And a way of looking at that is we can live from parts of self. We can live from a performance part. We can live from a fearful part, an anxious part. All sorts of different parts. And I think INFJs have a danger of living from an NI part, where they see that the truth that is able to glean from the world and how it's able to see the world is like a perfect place to hide from the deeper self and from the woundings that may underlie that NI part, if you like. And so it can essentially be very hard to identify, because when we set up our defense mechanisms growing up, they become natural, and it's very hard for us to get perspective on them. But I think simply an openness to ask more questions is a way of going a little deeper into the self. So, and in that supercharging NI video, I talked about the inner bedrock. That inner bedrock essentially is an illustration of the woundings and the deeper issues that we have. So deeper woundings and issues are essentially just things that might have happened to us in childhood. They can be even unresolved feelings, memories, incidences that we've had. They can be sort of faulty beliefs that we have about ourselves. We can have deeper issues of rejection, abandonment, fear. We could have some form of abuse in our childhood, or not just in childhood, but often that's where it begins. And so ways of identifying that there might be problems underneath is where NI falls flat. Where especially a lot of this can happen in the context of relationships, because often that's where issues manifest and play themselves out in our adult relationships. So it's really about looking at oneself and seeing, am I sort of going around the mulberry bush many times on this particular topic? Am I trying to push something that I believe is absolutely true and it's not going anywhere? Am I repeating similar patterns? Am I having the same sorts of problems in my relationships? Am I, are there patterns that are obvious? Am I uncomfortable? Are there potentially emotions and feelings that I am disconnected from, that NI is trying to communicate? Am I disconnected from my feelings? Am I lost in my cognitions, essentially, like my NI cognitions that seem very true and very real, but it doesn't have a lot of emotional connectedness to it, which is ironic, because often when that's the case, NI is communicating purely emotion from a cognitive perspective. And so it's important to ask those questions. What is it that I might be trying to speak on behalf of? What emotion or feeling am I trying to hide from or not feel? All sorts of different things, but there's just sort of some ways of trying to ask those questions. And it's going into that and resolving that. And resolving it can be simply, begins by acknowledging that it's there. Yes, there is this emotion, there is this hurt, or there's this pain, or there's this specific feeling that is going on underneath, or there's an awareness of the dynamics that I'm experiencing in adulthood are a representation of something going on in childhood. It's really just being open to those questions and those wonderings, and working through those. That kind of removes them, or essentially removes the bedrock, so that we can live more from the self, from the place that the part of us that was originally created. The more we do that, because we don't address everything at once, it's really just a willingness to go on the journey of dealing with those deeper places, dealing with those issues. That the more that we address them, the more that we identify them, essentially the more in self we are. And as we go that journey, the more self is available to us, if you like. True self is another way of saying it. There's more of that available to us, that we're more living from that place, that then informs NI, its deeper knowledge or deeper truth, if you like, and then NI communicates that, rather than being cut off from the self, if you like, and covering over issues and then just living from NI, that will have, it will still, the trick is that NI can still have truth about what it sees and what it knows, but it doesn't land, it doesn't penetrate, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't, it's like it doesn't have power. It has truth without power. Whereas when we get down into more of the true self, the way in which we communicate ourselves and our needs and what we're concerned about or worried about comes from a deeper, truer place. And so then it carries a weight, it carries a deeper truth that's able to be fully realized in for other people that might be on the receiving end of NI, so, or on the receiving end of the INFJ. One of the main reasons for that is when we're living from NI as opposed to the true self, it's like a defense mechanism that I addressed in one of my other videos. And a defensive posture just promotes a defensive response, and that's often why things don't change, that things don't land, that feel like a parrot just repeating the same thing over and over again. It's often because it's coming from a defensive position as opposed to a deeper place in the self. A way of describing the self is that it is completely comfortable with itself, if you like. It doesn't feel threatened. It doesn't carry the concern the same way that our defensive parts might. So it can be aware that the self can be aware that another part of the self is feeling threatened in some way, but the way in which it addresses it is very different from when we're acting from true self as opposed to a defensive position. So looking at it from layers, it's like not all INFJs, but the evolution, if you like, of an INFJ is living from a lost place of self, disconnected from their cognitive function, just in that disconnected place. Then can be that reconnection with NI. That is a blessing and a much better place to live. But we can still live from that place, from a defensiveness, because we're not really addressing all the other issues that might be there. And so the journey then is to go deeper into addressing what those issues are, and it's usually the pain of life that kind of promotes those deeper questions, which I think INFJs are open to for the most part. Then identifying those deeper issues, addressing those issues, which is essentially a way down into living from true self. And it also promotes NI to take its rightful place in the self, or within the INFJ. And then the self is able to inform knowledge and understanding to NI, and then NI is able to communicate that out into the world, and so on. So anyway, I just wanted to share it from that angle in this video. There's of course an infinite other ways this could be described. There's just so many variables to consider, but this is just what it is for this video. I hope you found it helpful and insightful. I hope it speaks to something deeper. And thank you for watching this video. Just to plug the work that I do, I am a professional counsellor. The MBTI is just one aspect of one modality that I work from within counselling. If you're interested in those services, feel free to visit my website. I'd be happy to take your inquiry. And I hope this video finds you well, and I'll see you in another video.